Hello all, welcome you back to one more session on Tableau. These days in this pandemic, you can understand that the amount of data that we are creating every day, we have got inadequacies in every essentials possible, but only kind of uh, adequacy has been generated a lot in terms of the users data which is being created. So if we are generating this much amount of data, naturally what happens is that most of the organizations will try to make use of the data that we generate in a meaningful manner and also to promote certain things. And they are always looking for some methods to they can actually transform and combine the data efficiently. uh, in that process, we looked into one feature when we were discussing about working with the data. So that is what we called it as a cross join in Tableau, and we can enjoy the privilege of joining in Tableau. So as I said, a new methodologies or newer way of looking into how they wanted to perform the transformation and combination with this data. There's one more concept also is there, which is again used for combining the data, and that is what you call it as a data blending. So there are, most of the time what happens is that many people misunderstand joining and blending to be as such are, both of them look similar. So it is important for us to understand, first of all, what is the difference between data blending and joining. Okay, so first let's go ahead and understand why do we require something called as a blending in your Tableau specifically. Okay, so suppose if you have, if you are working with Tableau for a longer period of time, you can understand that you have to work with several types of data, and these several types of data doesn't come from a single source. Okay, so maybe you will have a data which is transactional data which is stored in a Salesforce, and then some kind of data which is stored in your Access. So what you wanted to do is that you wanted to basically combine the data which is stored in different databases. Okay, so and also if you look into the granularity of the data and which is captured in each table, in these two different sources will also be different. So how do I do a combining if I have data from multiple sources and the granularity of these two of these data in these two sources is completely different? Okay, so can we use a join for this? The first question that comes to our mind. Okay, so suppose if you wanted to make use of a cross join in the case of having a different databases. Okay, in fact speaking, your cross join do not support connections to your cube databases, which means I'm talking about the cloud data sources. For example, if you have your Oracle base or something like that is there, then if in case of joining, it'll not support you to make a connection with this data source. And also if you wanted to work with some kind of extract only connections, for example, if you take a Google Analytics, we wanted to just extract few things and then wanted to perform a Google Analytics. Again, extract only connections if you wanted to make it. Again, in case of a joining, you cannot do that. Okay, so what you need to essentially do is that you need to have two different data sources. Okay, you will have two different data sources for the data that you want to analyze, and then what you will do is you will use a blending to combine the data sources on a single sheet. Okay, so just recollect what we did for a join. Okay, so two data sources was there, but the connection was considered as a single connection. There were two tables was there. Okay, that's how we did a joining. Okay, but here the entirely the data source is going to be different. Okay, So when you have data sources in two different places, so the granularity in which the first source might be varying from the second source. So if you have something like this, how do we combine these things? We cannot do it by making use of your join. That's where the concept of your blending comes in. Another thing, um, in terms of granularity also, I have to speak a little bit. For example, if you're trying to analyze some kind of transaction data as well as the quota data, so transaction data, you know that it is going to capture all of the transactions. Whereas if you take a quota, it might mostly be involved with an aggregate transactions at the quarter level. Okay, so this transactional values are captured at different levels of detail in each data set. What happens is that you cannot use a join here. Okay, you need to use a data blending in your to combine your data. I hope you could have got an idea why we are going for data blending. Just to recollect, to summarize what we have seen, data blending, why we are going is just because we wanted to combine the data from multiple data sources. Okay, and every data source connection is not supported if you will make use of your join, whereas in a blending that is possible. Okay, so and also granularity, if it varies, we need to take care of the granularity as well. So because of these reasons, what exactly we are trying to do is that instead of a join, we will go for a blending. So what exactly I'm trying to do in blending is that, as I told you, I am going to get the data from multiple sources. Say, for example, this order table is there, right? So this order table is something which is residing in my cloud database, which is in my cube database. And then this product table is there, right? That product table is something which is there in my as a CSV file. Locally, it is available for me. Okay. So now what I wanted to do is that we have a related data in two different sources. Okay. So what is the related data here is, of course, the product ID is the related data here. And it is there, but it is there in two different sources. Okay. But you wanted all of them together in a single view for doing an analysis. Okay. So that is where, well, that is what you call it as a data blending. Okay. So most of the time we always use joins for performing this kind of operations. Okay. But we need to understand how this is different from the blending. Let's see that with an example. Okay. So what you're seeing in the screen right now is some table is there. Two tables are there. A common field which is between these two is basically your user ID. So based on this column field, you will try to combine the data. Assume that if you're trying to do a left join to combine this data, this is the result that you're going to get it. Just because of the reason, the left join is going to have all the values which is there in my left table. And then it is going to get me like, all the rows, all the rows from the left table and any row from the right table that is having a row match, corresponding row match is there in the left table. That's what it is going to get it. Okay. So suppose if you see here, what happens is that, of course, all the columns which is there in me, all the rows which is there in my left table should be there. So 1, 2, 4, and 1, everything is there. So you can identify with these values G, J, and then M and W. All of the values of the left table is there. Now in the right table, only matches will be considered, right? So all these three, like, 1, 2, 1, all of these three could be taken. So 1, 2, and 1, which means G, J, and then W should be there. Okay. So that's what it is there, right? So here you don't find a match over here. That's why it is giving a null value here. So you could have got an idea how this joining is working. Suppose Instead of that, if I will use a data blending to combine the data, a query is going to be sent to the database for each data source which is used on the sheet. And the results of the data, including the aggregated data, is going to be sent back and combined by the Tableau. Okay. So what happens is that you can actually, you can actually understand the difference here. So if you see here, you have these tables, right? So the linking table is what? User ID is what is the linking table. Okay. So in case if the linking field or user ID, and in case if you are trying to blend this, it will take all of the data from the left table, and then it is going to supplement the left table with the data from the right table. Okay. So that's what it is going to do. Okay. So here, if you see, it is going to take all the things of the left table and it is going to supplement that with the data from the right table. So you have 1, 2, and 3, right? And type is there G. And for this 1, 2, and 3, what is the record I have is basically A1. Okay. And if you find it, I have one more instance also, 1, 2, 3, which is C1. Okay. So now what happens is that it is basically giving a null value here, because a row in the left table is not, it is not having a corresponding row match in the right table. Okay. So that's the reason why you will find a null value over here. And if you see here, this asterisk is there, right? That is because there are multiple corresponding values, as I told you, right? 1, 2, 3. There is multiple correspondence values as A1 and C1. So for that, because of that reason, it is giving it as an asterisk. Okay. So this is the way how it performs your blending. Okay. So immediately, as you have done this, you understood the process, right? Now joining is there and now blending is there. We have got how the joining and blending is different. So when exactly I should use blending right now? You could have got an idea already. Join is something which is actually causing a duplicate data. If you observe here, there is a duplication of data. Okay. But in blending, you do not have a duplication. So again, when you have a duplicate data after a join, that's again a kind of symptom, which is again at different levels of detail, there are data. So whenever you are having a duplicated data in your table, instead of going for a join, you can use a blending to blend on a common dimension. Okay. So that's one case where you can go for blending, not going for the joining, duplication of data. Then you have, if you are having lots and lots of data. Okay. So typically joins, if you take, it is, of course, it is recommended for combining your data from the same database. Okay. So generally what happens is that the joins will be handled by the database itself. Okay. So the query performance, it will have a query optimization engine, and the join query optimization could be done because it's going to be handled by the database itself. Okay. However, when you're working with large set of data, what happens is that join is going to put a strain on a database, and that will directly affect the performance. So that cases, you can actually go for a blending instead of a joining. Okay. So Tableau is handling the combining the data after the data is aggregated. So you will have little data to combine, and most of the time your performance is going to be improved. Two conditions I have told you when to use blending instead of a join. So the first case is, of course, when you have a duplicate data, go for a blending. And then again, when you have very large amount of data, just because of keeping up the performance, what you can do is you can go for a blending instead of a join. Another one very important point is that, so suppose if your tables are not matching with each other correctly after a join, okay, then what you can do is you can just set up a data sources for each table, okay, and then use a blending to combine the data, okay. So which means when you wanted to perform a cleaning for your data, okay, so when you wanted to perform a cleaning for your data, again you can go for a blending. So these are different options which I'm giving it to you to understand when exactly I should make use of a joining and when exactly I should make use of my blending option. Okay, so this is how, I mean, these are certain things that I wanted to talk about blending. And you can understand that, you know, blending your data in Tableau is actually, these are three things that I have spoken already. Okay, now how do we blend the data? Okay, see, you can use data blending whenever you will have data in two separate data sources. Okay, say for example, if you have here, there is one thing called as a coffee chain MDB. Okay, so this is one data source. Along with that, superstore connection was also there. Okay, so two data sources connection was there. Okay, and then first thing what you need to do is that you need to connect the set of the data that you wanted to connect to it, and then you can go to your let me just go to my Tableau. Okay, so here you can go to your data and then you can just click on your one more data source. Now I will connect it as superstore data source. It is connected. Okay, and let me just go to my data source page. Okay, data, and then you can actually add a new data source here. Okay, so if you are if I'm mentioning it as new data source, let me just, for showing purpose, I'll show you the this file itself. Of course you cannot do a blending here because that's different and this different here. Okay, so you can understand that two different data sources connection is being made. Okay, so if I will go to my here into my sheets, you can see here my products table is already getting displayed. Okay, so yeah, so that's the meaning of having two different sources. Okay, now for me there is a problem because of the online version that I'm using. The problem is that when I try to import my MDB source, that is not supported in my Tableau online. So if you have your desktop version, then I'm going to give you the steps that you can adopt it for blending the data. So you can just follow along the steps to perform the blending option. So all the screenshots are handy, so you can just make use of these screenshot and then go ahead with the steps. So now what we have is superstore is our one source and the second source is our coffee chain is our second source. So two sources are there and you can understand now here. Okay, so this is like you have your coffee chain query which is there, and uh, you you just have your, so you have got your sample coffee chain and it is just giving you a view, right? It is just showing you the different types of tables and the joins which is available in that corresponding file. Now what you can do is that once this is fine, now the next thing what you need to do is that you need to go to your data source and then you have to add the secondary data source. Okay, so which is nothing but you will just go to your Tableau here. Okay, and yeah, let me just go to my workbook here. Yeah, workbook is already here, so let me just go here. So this is the data source is there. Just you will click on your add button here, and which connection you wanted to use it, you just make use of that connection. And once you have done this process, what happens is that you can see these type of thing, like, both the data sources will be appearing on your data window. So if you can see here, just concentrate here, you have a coffee chain query is one data source, and then your sample superstore, which is another data source. Okay, so you need to get something like this just to make sure that two different data sources are available. Okay, now what we wanted to do is we just wanted to do a blending here. So what you can do is we can integrate the data from sample superstore and the coffee chain is there, right? So they should have a common dimension. So here, what is the common dimension which is existing is, of course, the state. Okay, so the state is going to be the common dimension between your coffee chain and the sample superstore. Okay, now what you're going to do is that just you are going to drag the state field into your, state field from the primary data source. This is my primary data source, which is my coffee chain query. Okay, we have just dragged that corresponding state, which is from which is actually a common dimension between your sample coffee chain and sample superstore. Then you're going to just drag that down and put it in your row shelf. And also you're going to drag the profit from the secondary data source. This is not from the same data source, it is from the secondary data source. Okay, so that you are going to drag it and then you're going to place it in your column shelf. Once that is done, you can see that the horizontal bar option from the show me, you can select a horizontal bar to get your graphical visualization. So the chart is clearly giving us an indication that how the profit varies is for each state. Okay, in both the sample coffee chain as well as in the sample superstore data. Okay, so this is how it is blending the data, and we can actually see the results in the form of a graphs over here. Okay, so this is how we can actually go ahead and perform the you can perform your blending with Tableau. Of course, anything comes with a kind of limitations are always there. So the one type of limitation that you could probably face is in terms of the speed. So as I said, it is going to actually face a problem in terms of the performance, just because of the reason that it needs to do a comparison between the multiple values which is present in the two data sources. So it has to actually go ahead with two data sources and then have to perform the blending. So we do not know which kind of each data source will have its own timing, right? So in that sense, probably this kind of speed would become an issue over here. Okay, so suppose for example, if you will try to sort by a calculated field which is using a blending data, so it will not be listed in the fields drop down list. Okay, so that's the in terms of high granularity, the speed of the query is going to be compromised. Okay, and blending, always the primary data source is going to be only cubes. Okay, so they cannot be used as secondary data sources. So always cubes is going to be your primary data source. So these are some of the limitations with respect to your data blending. I hope you could have got an idea about when exactly I should make use of joins and when exactly I should make use of blending. So we gave a clear explanation about when to use blending. So do remember those points and it is important to know when to use blending and when to use joining. So follow along the instructions to perform a blending and the joining to get an idea of how both of these things works. So that's all I have for this session. I'll see you in the next session to have a discussion about live and extract data sources. Thank you.